Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Unfound Podcast channel on YouTube. I'm, of course, Unfound's host, Ed Densel. This is actually a video that I have been wanting to do for a while, and finally came to be because of some work. I guess you could say I'm doing it a little bit off the record. But I continue in the background to work on the murder of Jonelle Matthews. I continue to collect information. Most of you know that I continue to have correspondence with Steve Pankey. He and I writing letters back and forth to each other since what would have been the summer, late summer of 2023. So we've been doing that almost a year and a half now. And I have covered the contents of some of the letters that Steve has written me in some of the live shows. But today, this is something that I've not done before, and why it's taken this long, I don't know. Maybe because I've been, when you get so caught up making the podcast every Friday, that becomes the priority. But being that I've taken a little time off from that, it gives me an opportunity to catch up on some things I've been meaning to do, and this is one of those items. I actually want to diagram the Matthews house the way it looked on the night that Jonelle went missing. Of course, we know eventually she was found, her remains were found buried in a field outside of Greeley, Colorado in 2019, and she certainly was murdered, presumably by Steve Pankey. At least that's what the second jury decided. But in having conversations with my volunteer assistants, with some of you, with Steve and other people, I have to admit it's still a little hard for me to visualize what happened that night, looking at what we know of the facts from that night. And what I mean by that, the footprints, the garage door, on and on and on. So I'm going to use this video to try to explain why I find it not very clear. This is one of those situations where you look at it just in general. If you just take a 30-second, think about it for 30 seconds, it seems pretty clear. But if you do that for 5 minutes, then it's not so clear. And that's what I want to try to show in this video. So I'm going to try to do this by just using this notebook and a pen, and all of you are going to quickly see why I'm not an artist. But this is the only way I can do it, because I want to do it in real time by drawing, at least sketching out a few things so you can see what I'm thinking instead of just making a picture and then pointing out things. I actually want to put things into the picture as I'm talking. All right, so what are you looking at here on this notebook paper? Well, this is a rough diagram of the Matthews house as it was back in 1984. Of course, you have the garage over here. This is where they would have parked their cars. And then this is the interior of the house. For what I'm doing today, it's not important to diagram each room or anything. That is not what I'm getting at today. All we need to understand is that this is the garage where the cars would have been parked. This is the interior of the house. And these are the doors that existed. Of course, we have the garage door that is right here as well, and I'll get to that in a moment. But these are the doors. So we had the front door of the house. So over here is the main street. This is the driveway right here. This is the garage. And so this would be the front door of the Matthews house. This is the door that goes from the garage into the interior of the house. There was a door on the back of the garage right here. And when you see these like little angles, this means the door opens like a regular door, like on a hinge. And then there was a sliding glass door on the back of the house. And that's what this means with these arrows going both ways, meaning that it's a sliding door. Okay, just so all of you understand what this all means. This is just a rough as if we were looking at it from the sky down on the Matthews house that time. And I guess that's what the house still looks like to this day. So now I'm going to draw in some things, of course, that popped up that seemingly anybody who has taken interest in Jonelle's murder knows about this house and the grass and snow and everything outside. So what do we know? Well, first of all, we know, and I'm just going to put little dashes in here to signify, we know that there were footprints, just like these little dashes, around the house. Okay, on the front. So here we go. We'll just put them going around the corner of the house. And you have to keep in mind, there was a house very close to the left side of the Matthews home. There's a house very close to the right side. It's not a house that's sitting out in the middle of nowhere like a country house, like a farmhouse. It's right in Greeley, right on a regular street in a neighborhood. House over here to the left, house over to the right. But we had these footprints that were in the snow, so I'll put snow just to make sure everybody understands snow. All over here. Snow. But we have these footprints in the snow. What else do we have? Well, we had footprints in the back of the house as well. And what could be told is that the footprints did not go around the far side of the house. Instead, the footprints started at this door and went over in this direction toward the sliding glass door. And maybe they even went further or farther over here. What else do we know? We know that there was some sort of mark, like an oil stain or something like that in the garage. And I'm just going to put, I don't know exactly where it was, but a little circle there. Of course, that's probably way bigger than it was. But we know that there was a footprint or footprints, maybe just one, in this. You got probably a lot of your garages there at home. You know what I'm talking about. Whether you have a little oil leak or something, transmission leak. We know that somebody stepped in this in the garage. There were no other footprints in the garage. There was just this one because somebody, presumably the killer, stepped in this. And the pattern that was in this puddle here matches the marks that were made by the shoe prints outside. And if you don't know, they were kind of shoe that had like dots on the bottom, like what we might have, was very popular in the 1980s, like a turf shoe. However, you should know that kind of shoe has never been identified, despite investigators sending letters to many, many, many shoe manufacturers, so Adidas, Nike, all of them. These companies got back to investigators and they said, yeah, we kind of make a shoe kind of like that, but they never found a shoe that matched the exact pattern of this shoe. And the shoe, they estimated that the shoe size was a size 11. Now, what else do we know? We know that some of the prints were raked over, became a big issue, of course, in the trial, because Steve seemingly knew this when most other people did not. I'm not sure that's true, but that's what the prosecution said. My opinion is that many people knew about this back at the time. But importantly, only the shoe prints in the back were raked over. So now I'm just going to put some X's over those footprints. Some tried to disguise them or make them go away. Not very well, okay? And it should also be known that the rake that was used was a rake from the Matthews house. This was not something where the killer showed up and brought a rake along. This rake was in there, in the garage, used to disguise these shoe prints in the back and seemingly put back in place. But they could not get any forensic evidence, no fingerprints, nothing that were helpful from the rake. Okay? Importantly, none of the shoe prints, footprints, whatever you want to call them, in the front were touched. None. Zero. for whatever reason. It doesn't even seem like whoever did this even attempted this. So it wasn't even like they were half done or quarter done. There were no rake markings out here at all, only in the back. Some other things to understand about these footprints. These footprints did not show any signs of a struggle, like kind of haphazard. It just seemed like somebody walking back and forth. My understanding is that it could be the person was trying to disguise the prints by walking back over the prints. So if the person walked one way, if the person turned around and came back the other way, the person stepped in the previous prints, which might have also caused the prints to hard. Maybe that's one of the reasons they were hard to determine what kind of shoe it was. So we had footprints going this way, but then the footprints were coming back this way and the person stepped in those prints. I think this happened in the front as well. Was this done on purpose, by accident? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So this was what everything looked like that night that Jonelle went missing. Of course, her father comes home. Later, her sister comes home. And this is now what it looked like. Of course, we also have to remember one more thing. The garage door was open. Open. Whereas Jim Matthews over and over has insisted that he, being the last person to leave the house earlier that evening, earlier that day, he insists that the garage door was closed. I'm not calling him a liar, or I really don't know, but that's what he says. He says that he closed it, or I guess if he left last, he closed it. And when Russ Ross dropped Jonelle off, Russ says, and his daughter also says, Deanna, that the door was open. So somehow in that time frame of those hours, however long it was, this door went from being closed to open. Somehow. Now, the garage door did not have what we call a clicker or remote control. Those did exist in 1984. I can tell you that the house that I grew up in Leechburg, Pennsylvania, we had a very similar kind of garage, double door, and we did have remote control buttons that we could put in our cars to open this. We also had a button on the door as well, like hardwired, but we had remote controls. It seems the Matthews did not. So to open and close this, you couldn't do it from a car. You actually had to get out of your car to open and close it, maybe even having to lift it or pull it down. Very important to remember. Now, what Russ Ross says is that when he dropped Jonelle off, she went up the driveway and in through this door, and he saw the lights come on. And he said that was pretty common. There was nothing unusual about that at all. One other thing to remember, and I'm going to break this, there was no snow. My writing's terrible too. No snow. Let me read that back just a little bit. There was no snow. No snow in the driveway. There's snow in the grass, no snow, and you have to, if you don't know, it had not snowed for a week. It was cold enough that the snow was on the ground, but if you go back and check the weather from back in Greeley from December of 1984, it had snowed a week before, on the 13th, I think. Because it was so cold, the snow stuck, but by that time, the snow on the pavement had melted or gotten run over or whatever in the driveway. There was no snow here, but snow on the grass. But she walks up into this, through this door to get inside the house. And of course, something, as we know, happened after that. So once again, this is the situation we're looking at that night when Mr. Matthews and Jennifer get home. We have footprints out in the front that are untouched, footprints in the back that if somebody's tried to rake them over to make them go away, maybe. We had this footprint in oil or kind of marking or smudge or something on the garage floor, and the garage door was open. Some other things that are important that once again, thinking about this, now that I've had time to think about this, no wet footprints were noted inside the house. So very well they could have melted or dried, I guess you'd say. Or did the killer take off the shoes, his or her shoes? We might throw around a few ideas. We also might think, well, the prints were there and the police just didn't think to look for them. That's certainly possible too. But in all the paperwork that I've seen, and I've seen a lot, no mentioning of any of these footprints inside the house. Despite, obviously, this person walking in the snow. Could have been missed. Maybe they were there. Maybe they weren't there. But that's something to remember. What else do we have to remember? Jonelle's footprints are not seen in the snow at all. They're not on the front, not in the back, and there's no chance, given my understanding, that they were raked over. So we only have a few choices there. Either Jonelle was carried out like through the front door or the back door. I don't know if that's possible. She was 12 years old, but my understanding is she was kind of big for her age. She had what we might say matured early. Certainly could have been carried by a grown male. Certainly. Maybe somewhat inconvenient. But it's a choice. I don't know if it would be the first choice in my mind. But she might have been carried out one of these doors in which if she walked, of course, her footprints would have been seen. Or she was taken out this door right here, and her footprints weren't seen. Why? Because she didn't step in this smudge right here. And of course, there was no snow. This was dry pavement. It's not going to leave any footprints. And in fact, the footprints that are seen in the snow here, because this area was dry, the pavement was dry, there are no footprints there. Something important to remember. So I ask you this. And this is where, like I said, you think about this for 30 seconds, everything seems so clear, but you think about it for 5 minutes and it becomes complex. What are we talking about here? Why is it, if this were an abduction, and I'm certainly perfectly willing to believe that, if this were an abduction, how did this get done without any footprints? I mean, we can only go by the facts. We can say, well, it might have been missed for this reason and that reason. How could an abduction take place when we have no footprints of the abductor inside the house? Likewise, if Jonelle was carried, of course we know that it ended up that she was shot in the head. But we also know there was no blood or anything, signs of violence inside the house. No signs of violence in the garage. So, how exactly did this person, or persons maybe, get her out of the house without ever seemingly stepping foot in it? In addition, what kind of abductor would go in there? I mean, I can understand if she's being taken out by force right out into the street on that evening. Obviously something happened. She wasn't in the house. She got taken by somebody. She left with somebody, for some reason. I guess it's possible that this person's creeping around here and then goes up to this door, knocks on it. She opens up and the person has a gun and she automatically goes with him. The problem is that some of the items of Jonelle's that are missing are things that she wouldn't have worn inside. The couple of the items are things that she probably would have gotten and then left. This would seemingly rule out what we would call a forceful abduction, where she's wearing whatever, the person comes up to this door, she opens up the door, and the person just grabs her and drags her away with whatever she has on. The problem, like I said, it seems some of the things are missing are things that she would not have been wearing at the point that she would have encountered somebody in this doorway. Likewise, we know because of her footprints, we know the person did not come up to this door and lead her away, or this door or lead her away, because we don't have Jonelle's footprints. In addition, we don't have any signs of a struggle or anything in the snow. Of course, the big problem is there's no way anybody could have known all this. There's no way we have to remember, somebody also opened this door, and it wasn't Jonelle. Could Jim Matthews have misremembered? Or something that, he thought he put the door down, but he didn't? He's been fairly consistent. I mean, I know that he's had problems with lie detector tests, but he's never wavered on that. That when he left, the door was down. He said that the night that she was discovered to be missing, and he said that all up through the trials just a few years ago. He's been very consistent on that. And I can't think of a reason that, one way or the other. Now, there are stories out there that the Matthews used to keep this door open all the time. I don't know. I don't know about that, because I've also seen a report where a neighbor said that oftentimes Jonelle, when she would come home, the whole house would be locked up, and she couldn't get inside it, meaning the garage door was down too. So that would kind of fly in the face of the idea that this garage door, they left it up a lot. Like I said, it's just not easy to come up with a scenario that fits the facts that are known. Because no footprints over here outside of Jonelle, no wet footprints, no signs that anybody besides Jonelle was ever inside the house. Snow, gets dirty. And it may, as we all know, I'm from Pennsylvania, you can go out in the snow and you come inside and you start walking on a rug. Yes, the rug will eventually dry, but we also know snow is not pure water. It usually has particulates in it, from pollution and everything else. And so when it dries, it kind of does leave a mark. Obviously, no marks were left inside the house. Surely somebody would have noticed that. Meaning the only choice we have, given that there's no footprints and everything, is that this is the way, this door right here in the garage is the way that person, that abductor, that killer, confronted, met Jonelle and saw Jonelle that night. It had to have been here in the garage. And like I said, I could see a situation where the person has a gun, as we know that she was eventually shot, knocks on the door, she opens up the door, whoever that person is, has a gun, Jonelle, come with me, and he walks her away from the house. Certainly possible, pretty brash, given that there was no way whoever this was could have known that Jonelle was going to be home alone that night. Pretty brash. Pretty on the edge, I would say. Pretty chancy. Wouldn't you say? Yeah. And then on top of the fact, as I've already pointed out, some of the items that are missing, that are Jonelle's, are items that she would not have been wearing if she answered the door, just as if she was sitting on the couch, as most people believe she was, just kind of lounging at home, waiting for her father and sister to come home. She hears, and, she would have, it's clear that there was kind of some preparation before she left. Now, why would a killer allow her to do that? Oh yeah, get your jacket. It seems, though, that's what happened, given the items that are missing. You know, if we had scuffle marks over here, or drag marks or something, then we know this was, of course, forceful taking. But there's no signs of that. And in fact, even with this splotch here in the garage, Jonelle, nothing connected to Jonelle was marked in this splotch either. And there's no stories that a car was ever in the driveway. So we also have to start thinking about this to take this one step further. And I know this is a long video, but I got to get this all out. When exactly was this all raked up? Once again, this is one of those topics. 30 seconds, it doesn't seem that puzzling. You think about it for 5 minutes, it does. Did this get raked up before or after Jonelle got abducted? I mean, really, she's in the house. This person's creeping around. She's in there watching TV. Like we know that she answered the phone. And this person's creeping around. And then while she's in there by herself, this person kind of secretly gets this rake and goes out and covers that all up, but doesn't do the front yard. It seems unlikely. But what also seems unlikely is the person somehow gets Jonelle and then goes back and covers that all up and only does one side. When would that person, where was Jonelle when the rake, if this was done after Jonelle got abducted, when exactly was this raking done? What did he do? Put her in a car and just say, stay here, I'm going to go do some raking, and she just sat there? Was there another person involved? It's hard to understand. In fact, this raking part is the part that gets me the most. When we start thinking about it, it's hard to understand when the raking was done, because if it was done before Jonelle got abducted, that means it was getting done while she's sitting inside the house. That seemed, I mean, would she not hear something but it seems like it was done, who would think to do that? Yeah, I'm going to creep around and then I'm going to try to rake all my shoe prints without her hearing. That seems unlikely. Likewise, if it was done after, that seems like a lot of work. And very well may be by that time, Jonelle was already shot, but there's no proof that she was shot in the drive. There's no DNA or anything anywhere regarding this. But somehow this person found time to do that raking. So this has been on my mind for a while. I've been wanting to do this video. Maybe I'm just crazy. But I finally figured out a way to get this out and doing with this very rudimentary drawing. But I think this does get my point across. There's something, whether Steve Pankey did this or not, there's something still that is not clear about that night. And I think this video that's now almost a half hour long, I think this is all the reason that the prosecution brought none of this up in the trial. They never did give a theory, give their insight into what actually happened that night. They never said, we think that Steve Pankey went up to this door or that door or that door. Or when Steve Pankey raked these footprints or did these footprints. They never talked about any of that in the trial, even though the footprints and the raking and everything were part of their case. This is the reason they didn't do it, because it can't be explained easily. There you go. That's all I have. Of course, half hour. But I hope this gives you a little enlightenment. This is not in any way to say that Steve Pankey did not kill Jonelle. But what I am saying here is that however it happened, that Jonelle was taken out of that house that night by whoever, it's hard to explain. Thanks for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up. Please like it. Please share it. and even put some comments below. See you.